Cheers, queers! We're back with another super fun interview. Today we are talking to Yolo Martinez and Nix ZimLaw, who created the new web series High Stakes. Welcome to the podcast.
Ooh,
Thank you for having us.
Oh,
Excited.
We are so excited to talk to you guys. So we got to see the pilot, and listeners at home, you haven't seen it yet. So could you guys explain to our audience what High Stakes is about and also what inspired the project?
Yeah. Do you want to go next?
Sure. So Yolo's actually the originator of the series, and she brought me on to help with the script, and then I just dove into the whole world with her, and now it's, I think, both of our little like project child. But it basically follows a monster hunter named Marisol who accidentally falls in love with a vampire named Sitlali because they bump into each other both covered in blood, and Marisol thinks they're both monster hunters and Sitlali thinks they're both vampires, and so they fall for each other under this like mistaken identity. And then the rest of the episode follows like Marisol and her brother go to a call about vampires, and then they bump into each other and they realize the mistake that they made. And through a series of events, eventually Marisol and Sitlali end up fighting each other one-on-one, and the fight ends with a kiss. And then the rest of the series dive into their dating life and the like navigating this new relationship with these diametrically opposed backgrounds of like monster hunter and vampire. And we're also planning on getting more into like other types of monsters and exploring that queer identity, and we really want to just like showcase diverse characters with diverse backgrounds is like the goal. Not only the diverse characters, but a diverse crew to go with the cast. So that's really important to us.
Yeah, and what inspired this? Honestly, this whole thing came about through a college script writing class. Like I was taking a script writing class. Let me just put that out there. I am by no way means a writer. Like I know where my limits at, and writing is not one of them. So I wrote this because I was having such a hard time thinking of a concept, and my professor was just like, just write something you would want to watch. And I was like, that is so true. So I decided, and it came about just like, I want to see more fantasy stuff because a little bit about me, I personally love the fantasy genre. I grew up with the fantasy genre. Like my mom was a really big fantasy head. So like I grew up with like Van Helsing, Twilight, all vampire movies. So I was like, I'm going to make something vampire. And I was like, and at that time in my life, I needed like a cute little love story. So I was like, let's make it about a monster hunter. Because I just had watched First Kill, and I was so sad that it got canceled. So I was like, oh my God, let me continue on this trope. And I really loved it. So honestly, that's how High Stakes came to be. And I decided queer women because I was like, we need more diverse characters, not only on screen, but off screen.
And I think it was important for us to tell a story that like wasn't a coming out story and wasn't like coming to terms with being queer. It's like, we're queer. That's just a part of it. Like it's like how in any queer person's life, it's like, that's not the drama that's going on in my life. Like that's a side dish to the main event,
Yeah. And for me personally, I as a woman of color wanted to see more women of color in this specific genre because I feel like this genre specifically is very not diverse, or if it is diverse, it's usually the people of color dying first or the villain. So I just wanted to spin people of color in a more positive light within this genre.
And just have fun. Just like have a good time, like really feel good media.
Yeah, because I don't know about you guys, but times are tough now, and we need we need some silly little vampires. And I also just love fake blood. So
that was a huge thing. Is like Yolo told me going into this, she's like, I made way too much fake blood for a photo shoot, and now I need a project that uses a lot of fake blood. So that was part of the goal too.
Yeah, like if you look into my fridge, you would think I would insane. I have like buckets and buckets of fake blood in my fridge that I can't wait to use.
So
Do you currently have fake blood in your fridge?
I do. Do you want to see it? Do you want to see it?
That is totally up to you.
Okay, hold on.
can you hear me, Kaitlynn?
Yeah, I can.
I have. This is just
Wait,
this is
can
just
you?
one out of many.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I
What
made
is
way.
it?
Huh? It's corn syrup based. Because my biggest fear is getting fake blood and my actors getting it in their eyes or in their mouth and having it be toxic. So I decided to make it food grade.
Yeah, it's fully edible.
It is fully edible. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did a project in school for basic film, and I used ketchup because it wasn't serious. It was literally telling a story through pictures. And my teacher told me to never do that again. That's super easy to create fake blood. I'm like, okay, but it wasn't supposed to be serious.
Yeah, we were being
Not
silly
me.
goofy.
Not me though. I have the too much gene, so I always be doing the most.
It's true.
Which is wonderful. And that's why we even got to this point of you making it and being here. And everything you just talked about is something that we rant about and care so much about on our podcast. And that's why we thought you would just be such a great fit.
Yay.
So, yes. What was the process like for getting the production together for the show?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I was brought onto the project actually quite a ways into what was like the original production. So y'all, I don't know if you want to like start off at the beginning, because that was all you.
God, let me just say, as much as I am proud of the final product, getting to that was a complete and utter mess. Like, if it genuinely, the motto of the pilot, of the filming of the pilot was, if it's not one thing, it's another. So not only did the script had like several rewrites during the entire production,
like major rewrites.
yeah. We had crew dropping out left and right. We had, locations dropping on us. So ultimately, this production was a true testament to like indie filmmaking and, being able to like think on your feet and just like create solutions where, problems arose. But originally it started senior year. I was working at this production company called 22 West Media, and they were supposed to help me produce it because not only did they have the resources, but they had a lot of gear. But because of, like I said before, major script rewrites, actor availability, and just like overall crew dropping left and right.
I remember at this point, I was only a stunt coordinator on the project because I actually have stage combat background, so I was just helping out with that at the time. And I remember like it was days before, I think like a day or two before the original shoot dates, and it all got canceled. And
let me phrase that. It was the night before.
Okay, yeah, the night before it was like, and everything's called off, like don't show up, like it's not happening. Which was because like I think like 80% of the crew either didn't respond or dropped like the day before. And it was also the last semester of college for both of us and some of the other members on the team. So it was very busy. There were other like big school projects going on. So I think after it got canceled, we had to like reset and kind of go about it a new way. And start from scratch in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like nothing was ever more stressful than getting that phone call from one of my producers being like, so nobody's answering. I don't know if you want to take that shot. And I was like, well, what do you think? Because I'm just like, I'm over here freaking out. And she was like, honestly, I don't think it's worth it. But because of that, we had to push back filming dates, and I graduated, so I no longer had access to not only the company, but to like the resources. So we were basically starting from like zero.
I remember the moment that I became a producer on the project is like Yolo was talking to me and I'm like, so what's going on? Like, how are we? And she's like, it's you and me. That's it. That's all we've got. And I was like, well, then you don't need, at the time I was also supposed to be kind of like, not an intimacy coordinator because I don't have like the qualifications for that, but I did have some research experience with it through my senior project. So I was supposed to just be like a third party for the actors for that. And I was like, you don't need an intimacy coordinator right now. You need a producer. So I'm going to step down from that role. I'm going to come on to produce and we'll find someone else to do that. And that's how I got more directly involved with like production outside of just stunt coordinating. And that's when we really started from scratch again and had to pull together like a new crew. Luckily, all the cast stayed the same. Our cast have been amazing. They've been with us through the start.
They so have, because I was like crying, screaming, throwing up because I was like, we're going to have to recast. And I personally hate the casting process. So I'm just like, I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to do that.
And I feel like at that point too, like because there'd been so many rehearsals, because we'd almost shot at one point, it was kind of like the cast already owned those characters. So to have to like, it was really important us to pick new dates and to keep our cast that we already had. Because I think anyone else coming in the characters would have completely changed being somebody else, you know?
And you didn't want to risk having to do another rewrite.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out.
Yeah.
It did. Yes. It all came together in the end, which I remember. Even in the editing process, scenes were changing. I was like, listen, we did not get like everything we needed for that scene. Like, I'm going to do my best with the editing I can do to put a story together. And I remember the first time we viewed it all together after the color correction and the sound design and everything. And we were like, oh, I can breathe again. We actually made something. It actually worked out, and I'm super proud of what we pulled together. And I think the episodes to come are only going to get better.
Oh, absolutely!
Because I know for sure we learned so much from doing this project.
Oh my god! Yeah. I could give you like an encyclopedia of things that I learned. Oh my god! Yeah, no, it genuinely this pilot episode has been a testament to like indie filmmaking and genuinely putting our degrees to work, essentially.
And look, you got a full-fledged pilot out of it and many more episodes in the works, which is super, super exciting. So let's go back to the pilot for a second. So you mentioned, give us a little rundown about what it's about. So we've seen it, and the protagonists are Marisol and ZimLaw. They seem to be opposites in many different ways. How would you describe these two characters and their dynamic with each other?
I feel like Marisol is a little bit more like the reserved, strong type, and ZimLaw's a bit more of like a party girl and like a little more, I don't know, I guess like flamboyant is one way you could describe it. Like she's got a little more spice to her, and I think like the dynamic between them, they're both it's kind of like you were saying, like it's a little bit of that like opposites attract, like they really balance each other out and kind of complement each other. And I think it's also for both of them kind of like this new exciting thing. For Marisol, it's like breaking a lot of boundaries for her of like, she has all these preconceived notions that like monsters are terrible, I must kill them all kind of thing. So it's really a revelation for her with her morals and like changing as a person. Whereas for ZimLaw, she's been around hundreds of years, and there's not a lot of stuff that's new to her. But I think, you know, being with a human and something about, she gets like this like spark, which she gets to talk about a little bit more in the second episode, but she feels this like kind of love at first sight moment with Marisol, and I feel like that is new to her, and that's what's interesting to her about the relationship and kind of pulls her in rather than just her being like, oh, it's just another human girl, you know?
Personally, they're giving me black cat and golden retriever energy.
Yes!
From the first sequence, which I love.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Totally.
It's always a fun dynamic.
Always.
Also, enemies
Don't
to
get me-
lovers? Are you kidding?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
Who
no,
doesn't
that is
love
the
some
best.
juicy enemies to lovers,
Yup.
or lovers to enemies to lovers.
Yes. All of it. Okay, so we have to talk about the meet cute over bleach pens. What was that like concept? Like, how did that become what it was?
Yeah. So for everyone
It's
listening, the very first scene, they're both going to buy bleach pens and they bump into each other. And then instead of Marisol having to buy her own, Silali ends up giving her one of the ones that came in her pack. And that's how they meet each other. But that all originated from Yolo. So I'll let her spill on how that came to be.
Again, so I was in script writing class and I knew that I wanted to write a comedy because, you know, for further context, me and Nix did our senior project together. And up until that point, I had been doing a lot of dramas. And I'm like, that's not who I am as a person. I'm very silly, goofy. So I was like, what, you know, I think the horror genre in it of itself is such a funny, like I don't know about you guys, but I saw Nosferatu recently and I was cracking the hell up because it was just so funny. So with that in mind, I was like, you know what would be so funny? A vampire going to buy like bleach. And I was like, what would be even funnier? A bleach or like a Tide pen. We use bleach pen because copyright.
We didn't want like the branding and
yeah. So I thought it would be hilarious having this meet cute. Originally, it was supposed to be at a CVS, but that didn't end up happening.
That was one of the rewrites that happened like on set. It was like, oh, we're not going to get to go inside, so it's now happening outside the building. Like, that was a whole thing.
Because in my head, I had originally want them like have it to be a lot more awkward. Have, you know, the like displays and having it spilled all over, and I thought it would have been really funny. So honestly, I just thought it would be funny, a vampire going for bleach.
Yeah, just like having to deal with the stains of that come with every meal for a vampire.
Yeah, because like, why is it like every vampire movie they're like so clean? I'm like, there's bodily fluids going everywhere.
Exactly. It's just practical. It just seemed like a very practical thing, and for both of those characters, so it's just a very funny and clever like meet cute. So well done there.
Thank you.
All right. So speaking of the script, so as you mentioned, like at least in the pilot episode, it focuses on vampire monster hunting. You said there might be more different types of monsters later on. When you were creating the world, how did you choose, just focusing on the vampire part, how did you choose which like lore to include? Because in the pilot, like they need to be welcomed into crossing thresholds, and like how did you decide what to include, what not to include for your like monsters?
In general, we really wanted to go like classic vampire. Yeah. So like, and I think for the most part, we're kind of like any vampire trope that we can work in or like make work in this script, we wanted to do that. So there's like the garlic powder, there's silver handcuffs, there's the entry to the doorway, a stake to the heart. And so I think we were just, we're both love vampire media, but I know like we thought a lot about like Twilight and What We Do in the Shadows,
Vampire Diaries,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So we kind of pulled all of our favorite little bits from all of our favorite vampire media.
Yeah.
So speaking of favorite vampire media, if High Stakes had a crossover with any other vampire / monster hunter series or movie, what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's such a great question. A part of me wants to say like the Vampire Diaries, only because the actress who plays Citlali literally every 5 minutes cannot stop bringing up Vampire Diaries.
She loves Vampire Diaries.
Like, I swear to obsessed. Like, I kid you not. She's always like, so when are we going to have a Vampire Diary reference? And I'm like, girl, I don't even like Vampire Diaries like that.
I personally, just because of the sentimental value and like it takes itself so seriously, but is actually so silly goofy, I would say Twilight, because I just think it is like the most ridiculous thing. Like I watched Twilight for the laughs. Like that was like growing up through middle school. And it being so popular and everyone was like diehard fans of it. Like I remember I went to the first release of Breaking Dawn Part 2, and it wasn't just the movie. I showed up at 8 a.m. and sat with a theater of people, and we watched the entire series to then the very first premiere of the last movie. So like Twilight was just a big part of me growing up, and now I look back on it and I'm like, why are these vampires so Mormon? Like let's make good vampire media that's not like about some like crazy stalker and straight people and stuff. Like, but I think it would be really funny to have some like sparkly vampires taking themselves way too seriously around our more grounded classic vampires. I feel like we have a very different vibe to the vampires we chose. So I think that conflict would be interesting.
I would have to add also Interview with a Vampire, but the new one.
Yes.
The recent. I would do anything and everything to have Lestat and Sitlali and Pierre interact. Like I need that to happen. Because Pierre and Lestat, one of the same. They're so dramatic, and for what?
It's true. I personally would vote for First Kill because I would like to see the Monster Hunter family those families interacting, and then like the vampires interacting.
I always forget about First Kill. I did watch First Kill, and like there's so many I think like accidental parallels between.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I love First Kill. Oh,
it's so good.
Sad.
It's so good.
It's so
It's not sad. It's
That
sad
was a
with
crime.
Yeah.
My only critique of it is that why are they all centered around high school? Like,
Well, thank you. Yes,
I know. Can we just be in college?
I
Let's
agree.
just be in college.
That is one of my rants about media in general. Like, because a lot of times in American media, they have high school kids doing what college kids do, and it's like, just put them in college, and your like universe expands so much by just making them actual adults.
Literally, and then no one has to be uncomfortable doing like those intimacy scenes. It's like,
right.
I know that this actor's 30, but they're pretending to be 17 right now, and I'm uncomfortable.
Like, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so let's age up the First Kill people into college, and then have High Stakes, First Kill, and Carmilla all come together.
Yes.
Oh my god, yes. Can you imagine Laura Hollis? Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yes.
I personally think Laura Hollis and Marisol Loki might be besties.
I agree. I can see that for sure. That'd be so fun. Damn. Okay. All right. Away from Carmilla, sadly. Okay. So let's go back to the pilot for a second. So in the pilot, there's multiple fight scenes that happen. So how did you approach the fight choreography when putting the pilot together?
So, as I said earlier, I was the stunt coordinator. I actually went to college twice. So, right out of high school, I went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, where I majored in acting. It's a strictly performing arts school, and they only have, at the time I went there, they only had 3 majors. I believe they have 4 now, but it was acting, musical theater, and dance. And I was in the acting program, and you kind of choose an extracurricular track for that, and there's a few different directions you could go, but I decided to go with stage combat because it was really exciting and something I hadn't done prior to that. And so because I stuck with that the 2 years that I was at that school, I actually did my last semester, I took a like stunt coordinator board certified test saying that I was qualified to teach and lead unarmed combat. So I was also trained with like rapier and dagger and broadsword and like a lot of other fun stuff, but I'm just qualified for unarmed combat. So when Yolo came to me with this idea for a script and we were writing in the fight scenes and stuff, I had in mind that I was like, but due to our limited resources, I'm going to be leading these fight scenes because I at least have some semblance of knowing what I'm doing rather than just like be like, okay, go hit each other. So we had to teach the actors how to keep themselves safe during these fights and talk a lot about like how to maintain distance. So even when you're, throwing punches, you're not close enough to that other person to hit them, and considering like what camera angle are we going to be shooting at, so that the choreography can lend itself to wherever the camera is going to be positioned. And we did have to, originally the party scene fight where Citlali and Marisol run into each other for the second time was originally at a movie theater. And this was during when we were still in school, and we had access to one of the theaters at the school, and we had actually choreographed the whole thing with rehearsals in the theater. And then, production got kind of canceled for a moment. We had to wait till after graduation. We redid things. And now the fight scene that you see in the final product happens in my apartment. It's actually the high stakes party apartment right behind you. Oh, sorry. I got my dog splayed out on the couch right there. But, but we had to we kept the heart of the fight choreography had already done, but we had to place it in a new setting and rework everything, make sure that, we had to remove furniture from the room to make it more spacious so it was safer for the actors to do their combat. And overall, all of the actors did really well with combat. They were great at listening and learning something new. I think they were all really excited to try some combat. So overall, I feel like the combat was one of the things we actually struggled with the least. It was probably one of the smoother parts of production.
Yeah.
Was there a specific moment during production where you thought, like, yes, this is why we're making this?
I don't know about for Nix, but give me a second. Nix, you go first.
Okay. I think filming the last scene, where Citlali and Marisol have their first kiss. That day we were working with an intimacy coordinator who is absolutely fabulous. Her name's Myra. But she was so professional and so good at what she does. And even though we just had like a kiss and most people wouldn't hire an intimacy coordinator for that, it was very important to Yolo and I to protect our actors and make sure that they were comfortable. And also knowing that like, they're both more green actors, like they're newer and they're still in college and school and like still developing their careers just like us. And we really wanted to make sure they were protected and we weren't exploiting them in any sort of way. So we had an all non-male crew. So mostly women, but like personally, I'm non-binary and also, not that day that we were filming, but we had a non-binary sound person as well. But just keeping men out of the environment because we didn't want it to feel like a bunch of men watching two girls kiss. Like that idea made us uncomfortable. And it was also something that the actors said they would feel more comfortable if there were no men in the room during that portion. So I just felt like working with Myra and having that day on set, I was really like, this is the atmosphere that I want to create and work with. Like I want to be in a world where like we're keeping actors safe and putting them first. Even a super low budget production, we managed to scrape together the funds to hire an intimacy coordinator to protect them, and we listened to them and wanted to give them a space where they felt the most comfortable. And there was also some really fun fight choreo that day, and I felt like that kiss is really the climax that we fight for the whole thing. So not only from a narrative perspective, but also from a perspective of what we're trying to cultivate in this like very like diverse and caring film crew. I just felt like that was a really good culmination for us. So I really enjoyed filming that day, and I felt like that was like, yes, like this is what I want to do more of. I know, Yolo, for you, that was a particularly stressful day. So you might not feel like that on that day, but you can share your version.
No, yeah, that day for me specifically was extremely rough. But I would have to say like the moment I knew I was doing something right wasn't particular when we were shooting. It was after I was helping out at this film festival, and I was talking to some of the other volunteers, and we started like swapping projects or whatever. And I met this one girl, her name is Magnimar, amazing, lovely, shout out to her. But she basically said something to me, something along the lines of like, I can't believe you're doing it. Like that is so impressive. Because I honestly, I was kind of just like completely negative about the experience. I was like, this happened, XYZ happened. And she was like, okay, but you are a Mexican woman doing it in this room. You know, you're like, it's kind of inspiring that you're like making your own path when this industry notoriously doesn't give women like you opportunities. And that's where I was like, oh shit, you're right. You're right. I should be grateful for this. And then after that, like my mentality changed and I was like, you know what? We're doing it. We're here.
Yeah, I feel like we both suffer a bit from that imposter syndrome sometimes of like, I'm just running around with the camera being silly. Like, but at the end of the day, like if you're making film, you're in the film industry, no matter like how small a production might be or low budget or how new you might be to all of it. Like at the end of the day, we did that and we're continuing to do that. And it's the start of a career, not the end. So, you know, we're only going to continue to grow. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't know if you're asking it or if you're deleting it.
Should I ask this? I feel like they just answered it.
Yeah, you're good. Well, I am so glad that you did make it. I mean, you've been through so much. It's natural to be like feel negative about it because everything is so fresh, but it's definitely nice to have that positive reassurance from people being like, yeah, but you're here and you did it.
Yeah.
And it's also so great to hear how passionate you were about protecting the actors. And this just proves that no production has an excuse not to protect.
Absolutely. Can I just make a note about Honora? That whole press tour was a goddamn mess. In my head, I'm just like, I can't believe like us being a very, very, very low production made better strides to make sure that their actors were comfortable. Sure, I'm not going to speak for Mikey and her experience, but to me, it just felt really wrong of the production to just kind of like make her feel like she didn't need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Intimacy coordinators are so important, not just for the actors, but for the crew. My biggest thing,
and from our experience, really wonderful people.
No, she was so wonderful. Like, it wasn't like she made it overtly complicated. She made it very simple because I, at that point, hadn't directed an intimate scene. So I needed that support for me personally. And I wanted to make sure my actresses were wonderful, especially because of the subject matter. Like, my biggest thing going into this was like, how do we write intimate scenes in a way that isn't exploiting or fetishizing women?
It's a really delicate line, especially when you're working with two women because it's so commonly fetishized. So I think like we've really tried to be protective of them and make sure we're not contributing in the wrong way.
Yeah, especially like Nick said before, our actresses are, you know, younger and newer, so we didn't want to set them up to fail, essentially.
And that's amazing. Yeah, intimacy coordinators are definitely very much needed. I'm very glad that they're becoming more well recognized. We had the opportunity to talk to the intimacy coordinator from Red, White, and Royal Blue, and he really told us more about the industry and even just like hand holding or someone like touching a shoulder. Like all of that is included in intimacy coordinating, things that you wouldn't normally think about.
Yes. And I think something that was great with Myra was like, not only was she there to be like that third party that can advocate for the actors, but and you know, someone to show up with like mint and toothbrushes and like stuff like that. But she was really great with like, okay, so how do you see this scene? How do you want it to feel? And then walking through like the specific choreography of it. I think there was just like a lot of details that, you know, it was her job to make sure they were recognized, and they very easily would have been unaddressed if we didn't have that intimacy coordinator there. So I think that's part of the reason it's so important, is like, even if you think you know what you're doing, it's not your profession, and you're gonna miss details if you don't have someone there to support you with it.
Totally. We talked about like how you scrape together the budget for an intimacy coordinator. So you're basically working with zero budget, and like that's a huge challenge. Like, kudos to you for making it happen. Were there any creative solutions or even unexpected opportunities that came about from not having the funds to like maybe do exactly what you wanted to do?
We raised a few $100s through GoFundMe. Honestly, kind of a flop of a GoFundMe campaign. We did not reach our goal. But I think that really had to do with us being like kind of new to that crowdsourcing, and not going about it the best way. I've been doing a lot of research on crowdfunding for our next episodes, because we cannot go broke again. So we're actually going to be working with Seed and Spark in the future, which, if you haven't heard of it, is a really great fundraising platform specifically built for film. So we're in the process right now of getting a Seed and Spark campaign going for episode 2. So look out for that. Make sure that you come support us when we get there. But for episode 1, a big chunk of how we paid for intimacy coordination was a collective that Yolo got accepted to, which was the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. And they gave us a donation that essentially covered the intimacy coordination. So I don't know, Yolo, if you want to speak any more about the experience you've had with them, but they were a great support to us.
No, yeah, they were extremely wonderful. They're very big on finding creative solutions. So they were kind of just advising me, you know, mostly reassuring me, because at that point I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And they were just overall helpful, answering any questions I possibly had. And, you know, we're so gracious enough to give us that money that was needed for the intimacy coordinator, because honestly, that and the location where this kiss happened were our biggest expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it all came together.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, being a podcast that focuses on queer media, welcome. I want to know, just in your own words, why queer representation is important to you, and why you decided to make a queer-focused pilot and project.
Yola, do you want to go first?
Yes,
You want me to?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Queer representation to me is honestly so viably important, especially being a woman of color. I personally feel that all representation matters, but, you know, to have this representation, you have to represent all aspects of life. My biggest thing with media in general, especially portraying Latino people, is that we're kind of just like set in one box. And when writing the script or writing the idea, it kind of just led to that, how I wanted to break away from stereotypical how Latino people are shown, and also how queer people are shown, because I feel like those two types can not only coexist but help each other out. If there's more Latino representation, there's an opportunity for more queer representation in a more positive light. So honestly, representation is everything to me, because it not only reflects how I live, but I just want to see overall more stories of me and my friends.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when we were writing this together, Yolo, you told me like, one, that we wanted to post it to YouTube to make it super accessible. And Yolo, I remember you talking about kind of doing it for little you, like a younger version of you, and wanting to give yourself that representation that you didn't get to have growing up.
No,
which
honestly,
I think is huge.
High stakes, honestly, for me, is just healing that inner 13-year-old in me because at that age, you know, everything's going on, you know, you're discovering so much about yourself. And, you know, it's not that I didn't have the representation I wanted. Like Carmilla, huge inspiration for me. Like, again, 13-year-old me was raving, going crazy over it. But, you know, a part of me always felt like, yeah, this is great, but she doesn't look like me, or these characters do not, you know, reflect how I grew up. And also putting it on YouTube is representation, because I grew up not financially well off. So having it on YouTube, I'm hoping with the series that, you know, some little 13 brown girl sees this and is like, wow, I can do it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And for me, I feel like queer media is important for the representation, for people feeling seen and heard, and seeing your stories reflected on screen, seeing something you're able to relate to. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, that's why we watch stuff, is to relate to it and to feel something. And from a, like, strictly from a writing perspective, it is so boring to see more straight people. Like, we've seen straight people in every direction, every flavor. Like, let's go do something interesting. Let's go do something different. There's so much more to this life and this world to explore when you start breaking away from those typical boxes that we see. So I think there's just no reason not to write queer media. Like, it's real life. It's exciting. People like this exist. People like this want to see themselves on screen, and there's just no reason not to do it, especially as a queer person. Like, it's not so much like I'm going out of my way to do it. I'm just listening to what I want to see on screen, and like to my heart and my passions and my life. You know, it's like, if I guess it's like a straight person would never even consider not writing straight people, because that's like the life they experience, right? Or it'd be very awkward, or going out of their way to write someone not straight. I feel like it's the same way for me, where it's like, well, I'm queer, of course I'm going to write queer characters.
I mean, that's preferable for us as well.
I mean, yes, yeah. Yes to literally all of that.
Yeah, again, thank you for adding to the representation and all the care and time you took into this project and continuing to. How can people help support High Stakes?
Follow us on our social media, so you can find us most places. We're on most sites, I think, at this point. Okay. highstakes.series.
Yep. Or even on Tumblr.
Instagram.
Yeah. Even on Tumblr.
YouTube,
TikTok.
And I think our big platform right now, our most established platform would be our Instagram. So you can see a lot of our behind the scenes and different like interviews with the actors and stuff like that. So follow us on our different social media. Watch the first episode of High Stakes on our YouTube. Watch it, comment, like, subscribe to the channel. Those are all great ways to support us. And when you're following our Instagram or whatever have you, look out for our upcoming Seed and Spark campaign. And even the smallest donations are going to really help, and just like spreading and sharing the word to help make episode 2 also come to life.
Period.
All right. Well, you heard it. You heard it here first, folks. Go check out High Stakes and follow the program, and we'll be looking out for your Seed Sparks thing. That's great that you guys are doing that. We're very excited to see more of this series as you kind of like dive into this world you're building. It's very, very exciting. We personally want to thank you for being here today. Those are all of our questions. Thank you for answering them in depth and with so much passion. We appreciate that. Is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners at home before we like sign off today, other than support you?
Just thank you so much for listening and being interested, and, you know, supporting our media, but also supporting you guys. And I think like we all make a really nice community together, and it doesn't happen without people wanting to watch and listen. So thank you to all those people.
Yeah, thank you so much. Not only you guys, but listeners out there. You know, we go further together. So ultimately, you know, we got to support each other. And watch vampire media. So Hollywood can make more of it, because
yes,
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
And preferably
Vampires.
not
That's what you need to
cancel
know.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
canceling things.
Yeah, stop canceling good vampire representation.
Totally. Oh my God. Yes.
Bring
Okay.
back first kill, please.
Yes, bring back first
Yes.
kill.
Oh my god.
All right. Well, thank you both again. It was really a pleasure talking to you. And until next time, hydrate for lesbian Jesus, everyone.
Woohoo.
And gay it up all over the place.
Bye.
Bye.
And with that, we've been Big Gay Energy. If you like this episode, check out all our other episodes right here on YouTube. Please like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more amazing, super gay content.
If you'd like to support us, check out our merch store or join our Patreon for early access to episodes, exclusive content, and so much more.
Until next time, stay safe and hydrate for lesbian Jesus.